let us go then, you and I, where the evening is spread out across the sky like a patient etherized upon a table.
Shakespeare.
Close. T.S. Eliot.
Okay.
J. Alfred Prufrock. I went deep for that one.
Yeah, that was a deep cut. We just got back home from dinner and we're live now, so they get to hear a partial conversation. But I was out with my mom who's in town and my wife, and we were driving back and we were talking about the Mandela effect.
Oh, very nice.
Which is, for those of you that aren't aware of it, this is something that it's a collective memory that people have of something that didn't actually happen.
All right, so, the Berenstain Bears is the best example.
The Berenstain Bears is a good one. Did the Monopoly guy have a monocle or not have a monocle?
Okay, I didn't hear that one.
Do you know?
I think people might be conflating Mr. Moneybags, which I believe is the technical name of the Monopoly guy, and Mr. Peanut. I do not believe he had a monocle.
He did not, and I think that's what people are getting confused by. But I probably would have been convinced that he did.
It's also a good time to point out, which should be said as often as possible, Monopoly is a scourge against our great nation. Should never be played by anyone, anywhere, ever. Thank you. Sorry, as someone who worked in the game design industry for about 15 years, it literally has lowered the collective IQ of our country. Like, I have played to the range of 5,000 board games. Monopoly is probably the worst. There is nothing good about it. It is not quick, skill testing, enjoyable. I guess it teaches children about finance. I don't know. I would have to.
It teaches you how to cheat when you're the banker. Come on.
Yeah. That's a good. I didn't need any help with that, but okay. Anyhow, sorry. Just wanted to. Never, ever, ever. If you're considering playing Monopoly, have someone near you hit you in the face hard, and then send me a note, and I will send you a board game, and I can grab one at random, and it will be 68 times better than the game of Monopoly you were about to play. Okay, sorry. You were saying.
Not a very fun one, but yeah, so there was a variety of them, but it's called the Mandela effect because people think Mandela spent his life in jail and then died in jail. When he was actually freed, at some point, he got better part of 30 years in jail, but
31, I want to say, but he then went on to a successful career in advocacy for his country, anyway.
So as people are coming in, this is the fun things. The Mandela effect is quite interesting.
I knew that was the genesis of the name. That was another weird one because I never thought he died in jail. I recalled him having an extensive career post-prison, so that one, again, quite weird for me.
Well, that's what my wife had said as well. And I said, I think it's because we were more of school age and learning stuff that we probably caught it as a current event, where if it was something, like now when we're in the working world and we're distracted by a bunch of different things, you have a vague memory of something happening, yada, 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 and you may miss that. So,
okay.
I don't know. That was my guess. But here we are. 3-game slate. Yes, we will be talking basketball. We will be talking basketball very thoroughly because there are 6 teams in our player pool. I guess the only... Well, we aren't even really waiting on news. We don't know for sure about Cam Reddish. He's dealing with the sore wrist. This is a back-to-back. Yep. We don't know about Kyle O'Quinn. He was out last night for Philadelphia. He's still questionable. He has a calf injury. Joel Embiid is going to play on the back-to-back. He played, I want to say, 35 minutes last night.
I believe that's correct.
Off memory there. And he also, the only other time he had a back-to-back, he played 25 or 26 minutes on the next night. But neither here nor there. It was one of those, they didn't really need him as much. So long story short, don't think we're going to have to worry too much about him. If he's playing, he should be good to go. Philadelphia favored by 6 at home. Josh Richardson is out for Philadelphia, as is Jakar Sampson out for the opponents, Indiana. We know that Daniel House is out for an illness, as is Clint Capella. Tyson Chandler and his 37-year-old body will actually be starting. Does he play double-digit minutes? We'll get to that.
I'll take the over on 9.5. But
Brolo out. Shocker there. Sore back.
That's pretty key. Yeah.
That one is going to move some parts around, and then Cody Zeller available to play. He missed last night, so that kind of takes Mr. Bismack Biyombo out of things. I think that hits. Oh, and Ben McLemore is starting.
That's a shame because Bismack Biyombo would have been grotesquely overowned for being in a spot where he wouldn't have been needed to do Biyombo things and would have had to actually cover outside, which he isn't good at.
That was Adam's point. He said, I hope Zeller's out because we can then try to figure out if it's going to be Marvin Williams or, fill in the blank.
Or Willie Hernan Gomez or PJ Washington. Or I still think he would start. All right, so I'll take 2 minutes because it's a really good lesson point and talk about Wednesday show. So I've been very lucky this year, and I was lucky again Wednesday in that all the guys I talked about on the show really did well. It was a great day. I started talking about Embiid, and then I brought up Levine again, who crushed and everything. And then I ended the show with a blistering criticism of the 28% ownership of Bismack Biyombo. And I was very lucky because I did it all after his game started. Now, I assumed he was going to be 5% owned, 10% owned, and there wasn't a ton of great value, so that would have been fine. But much like the other times this year, we've done really well fading popular chalk that has a massive downside that it's going to hit a lot of the time. 30% $4,000 Bismack Biyombo, specifically to DraftKings, seemed absurd to me. Now, where I screwed up was I didn't allow enough of a possibility that he would get a ton of minutes. On there, I said I thought he'd get 24 minutes. I think Josh said he thought he'd get 25. To that point, Cody Zeller had set one previous game that year. It was against the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves had blown them out, and Bismack Biyombo, by the way, had played 18 minutes in that game. He was on pace to play maybe 24, but they play 4 different guys at center. They have a real youth movement thing going on there. Bismack Biyombo is in his 9th year in the league, 8th year in the league. He might be a 2012 rookie. Anyhow, 8th or 9th year in the league. And previous to the last couple of days, hadn't played more than 22, 24 minutes in a game. So where I screwed up was not expecting them to really play that game hard to win. He can guard Andre Drummond. He's one of the few pure centers left in the game. And people said, oh, you should have known they would need his length. He's not long. He's almost the shortest center in the NBA.
Is he taller than Montrezl Harrell?
No, Montrezl Harrell, I think, is 6'9" Biyombo. They may be the same height, but he is not tall, is my point. He is 3 inches shorter than Willie Hernan Gomez, so on and so forth. But he is hard-nosed. He is a good defender, puts his head down, doesn't do a great job when he's forced to get out from the basket. And with Andre Drummond out there, though he has started to take a couple threes and does a couple other things, he's going to hang out in there. So him just putting his head down, playing hard, getting all the rebounds he can, he got 9 each of the last 2 games, is the best way for that team to win the game. So where I screwed up, and I presume other people, is I didn't think there would be any chance he was going to play 33, 35 minutes. I assumed he was going to play maybe like 18 again if the game went sideways, maybe like 24. So for me, Bismack Biyombo, you could look it up. Career is basically like a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy, give or take. Maybe 0.85, somewhere in there, which, by the way, is also on the low end for a center. And I really like his game. Now, he's had some big games, fill-ins, especially for Orlando, was most frequently you'd have Vooch's out, windmill slam him. That system really played well for him. But, I figured 24 minutes. You got to project the guy for 19 fantasy points, 20, and 30% owned at $1,000 over the minimum on a 14-game slate. To me, was absolutely apeshit nuts. But certainly worked out and played very well 2 days in a row. So, but that's just, it's sort of the thought process by where all that went. If he costs $3,000, that's a different conversation. Like Robin Lopez today should be extensively owned because he costs literally a flat floor. On a 14-game slate, there were a million, and he did not, even having a great game for him, 35 or whatever fantasy points, wasn't in either ideal lineup. Your center spots, you wanted 60 out of Joel Embiid or 58 out of Jonas Valanciunas, and your value you wanted on that day was, Matisse Thybulle had a random 40-something burger. So, but again, I was very lucky that me just ranting on the dude was entirely post-show. But that's a bit of a talk on the process of why, that didn't make a ton of sense. But again, if he'd have played again today, Brooke Lopez be like the whole center position day is weird. So let's let's move on, I guess.
All right, here's one to kick it off. This is the $5 super chat. We do appreciate that. Braden Hoffman, he asks, Chandler Parson revenge game. I will say, looking under the hood, we did not project him for minutes here at Osmo. He has played in 2 games this season.
Reddish just went to doubtful, so I do think he plays.
Okay.
And they played in overtime last night. So
there we are.
I currently have him playing 12 minutes.
Okay.
I do think the overtime yesterday is really relevant to look at projecting these guys. And again, yesterday's rotation is reasonably instructive. You only had, I want to say, 11 minutes out of Cam Reddish. So if he doesn't suit up today, it's not going to change things radically. But I would play Chandler Parsons before I played Bruno Fernando. I'd play him before I played Evan Turner. I would play Vince Carter before I played Chandler Parsons. That's how they would rank out for me as far as guys I don't mind having 3% of on Atlanta. But I do not consider it entirely out of play on a 3-game slate. Now, for me, honestly, it's pretty goddamn desperate because Robin Lopez exists and because Austin Rivers exists.
Right.
They cost $3,000 and $3,200, and I project them extremely well for those prices. So if those guys aren't around, and it's a situation where the value is sort of Bismack Biyombo shitty, where it's 4,000 and it projects around 24, then minimum price Chandler Parsons really maybe only needs to get 17 fantasy points to work. And you can pack in more Giannis, Harden, Westbrook, whatever the hell. So, but the existence of Robin Lopez, sort of Ben McLemore and Gary Clark, Austin Rivers, I think, is the cheapest of them at 32, makes it a little more dicey for me. So it's a little weird situation that if Brook Lopez was playing and Daniel House was playing, I would honestly really not mind it. Because those guys are out and the super value does exist, it's a little bit specious.
Fair enough. And thank you, Braden. That, of course, reminds us that we must leave no stone unturned with just 6 teams in our player pool. One more super chat before we get started, and I don't want to lose it. Sam Snyder, thank you very much. It's $5 one. He would like to know your best FanDuel point guard under 5K.
Sure. I had FanDuel up. Let's...
And while Eddie is looking for that, on days that he does shows, you can get his player pool and rankings for both cash games and tournaments.
Well, in cash games, that for me is pretty clearly going to be Austin Rivers, not even incredibly close. He should play 30 minutes tonight now, maybe 29, maybe 32. The entire triumvirate of he and Ben McLemore and Gary Clark are all anemic fantasy players. Now, part of that comes from much of them having spent the entirety of their careers watching James Harden at close proximity, which is going to neuter everyone else's production. But none of them, I think, are at 0.7 fantasy points per minute in their career. For cash purposes, I would probably rank them McLemore, Rivers, Clark. For tournaments, I would probably rank them inversely. I think there is a very good likelihood that this game goes small. So I have incredibly little interest in Tyson Chandler. And even my guy Isaiah Hartenstein, which somebody I've touted a couple times this year and would seem like this would open up a ton of opportunity, seems a bit dicey. I think it is worth taking a moment to specifically point out the scheduling disparity that favors the Rockets today. Every other team is on a back-to-back. There are 6 teams on the slate, rather. 5 of them played yesterday. The Rockets did not. Not only did the Rockets not play yesterday, they didn't play the day before yesterday. They don't play tomorrow. And they don't play the day after tomorrow. So of the 6 teams, you have played yesterday in an overtime, and hasn't played in 72 hours and won't play again for 72 more hours, playing against the Hawks with a coach who, aside Tom Thibodeau, leans on his starters more heavily than any coach of this millennium. So I felt like I really needed to specifically point out that if you're looking for, cash or minute certitude, you are looking at a very short-handed Rockets rotation where, you're getting 40s out of a couple of those guys isn't impossible. Now, you need the game to stay close, and it's an Atlanta team that played 41 minutes, many of the guys yesterday's. in an overtime loss. And Trae Young had a monster there. But anyhow, for cash, my answer would be Austin Rivers, assuming you can do anything with the money. For tournaments, I would probably play Timothy John McConnell.
Really? Okay.
Well, look, that game can obviously go a little bit squirrely. Again, everybody played yesterday. Nate McMillan came out a little while ago and said, yeah, we played the overtime yesterday. I need our bench to be, ready to pick up some slack today. Now, that doesn't have to mean minutes. That can also mean production, but it's not like I can project any of these guys with any reasonable certitude of putting out a huge number. I like Austin Rivers quite a bit. He projects for about 20 fantasy points in his, 30 plus minutes. So you're basically looking at the guy you want to go squirrely on. So you could do Chris Clemens. If that money does anything for you, you could do, I think this game blows out. I want Chris Clemens to get a little shot in there. But I'd probably go with TJ McConnell, who will play regardless and potentially could get, 24 minutes in a blowout and go there. And just, I think, will be owned more beneficially than, say, Aaron Holiday. But the men I'd be happy playing in a tournament would be Holiday, McConnell, Rivers, Clemens, and Rivers is by far the priority by any sort of cash. And yes, more TJ McConnell revenge. It's very cute. Len played more last night.
I've forgotten that one. That's a good one.
That's a good. I had forgotten it too. You got me. And it's funny because I called him Timothy John McConnell, and that's what the announcer used to call him for the 76ers. And somehow it still didn't click with me. So nice. Len played well last night. Was that matchup based? Not particularly. He was just out there when they started to do a little better, so he got more time leading into overtime. Again, I think that game very possibly runs small. I do not believe I ranked Bruno Fernando, and I gave barely passable ranks for Damian Jones and Alex Len. In tournaments, I'd probably prefer Len by a little bit, but keep in mind they haven't been playing a ton, and he got his. Oh God, someone just put their framed TJ McConnell jersey in the Slack chat. That's
worth the price of Slack in and of itself.
Yeah, no, I was about to say I got to give that guy a super chat. That's very strong. Again, all of them are going to come behind the Rockets guys for me. Look, Gary Clark might not play 30 minutes. Austin Rivers is going to. Ben McLemore is going to. PJ Tucker, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden are getting up towards 40. What are my thoughts on Ersan tonight? That's a good one. I'm gonna jump ship to talk about the great Santini's question here. Okay, so my guess is Ersan does not play tonight. If he plays, I like him quite a bit. But since reintegrating DJ Wilson into the lineup, Ersan and DJ Wilson have not played on the same days. One plays and the other does not. Okay, so Ersan played last night. And if you look at oh God, I'm going to get this wrong. I'll look it up in a second. But there are 2 games that DJ Wilson has played since returning to serious time. And he played, 15 and 18 minutes in them or something. And those games were on let's see, today is the 30th. So week, 3 days ago, Sunday. The 20th and the 23rd are the 2 games that Wilson has played. And Ersan played neither one. And I think they're still kind of trying to do that and make it a thing. And this is kind of an easy matchup. So much like some of the things I've talked about earlier this year with Ersan, I got one of those right, and JaVale McGee and a couple of the other veteran guys. I would say I'd go 70-30 Ersan Ilyasova does not touch the court today. Maybe 60-40. Maybe that's a little ambitious. But I don't think Ersan will play. Meaning, and again, this game also with a real potentiality to go small, which is something the Bucks do a ton. And they have a lot of guys who get out there and play center. If you looked at their center rotation last night, it probably went Brolo, Ersan. Ersan played some center last night. I think when I went back and made sure to watch that game because their rotation with all the moving pieces is something that was of interest to me. I think Ersan was playing center to start the fourth quarter. Let me see. Fourth quarter started with Giannis DiVincenzo, Wesley Matthews, George Hill, and Ersan Ilyasova. So Ersan was randomly playing center there. So Again, the existence of the Hawks value makes this all, or excuse me, the Rockets value makes this all somewhat specious for me. Although there is also some very reasonable Hawks value with Cam Reddish sitting out again. But at the moment, I would play DJ Wilson over Ersan. I consider them, you're definitely reaching. They're above Chandler Parsons for me. But Robin Lopez is quite possibly, he is the best value play on the slate. He's minimum price both sites. FanDuel, you're losing some space to do it. But I'm at 26 minutes and a roughly comparable number of fantasy points. And at the floor, that's really the easiest place to go. But it would be him. And then by a cash setting, it's going to be site dependent. But the 3 Rockets will come second, third, and fourth.
All right. Do you want to just kind of do questions for this 3-gamer here?
I have no issue with that. That's fine.
I think we'll still touch on everything, and game by game is.
I like Bembry just fine now. Reddish going out as well is a thing. Be concerned that Bembry played 41 last night, and as we mentioned, there's a lot of guys who can just grab a few of these minutes. So you just need maybe Evan Turner plays 17 instead of 12. Maybe Vince Carter plays 16 instead of 11. Maybe, but 4K DeAndre Bembry feels just great. So I'm fine with any amount of Bembry. But again, 41 minutes last night, very much a real thing. Let me take a look at ownership. I have not looked at ownership yet, and then it'll be very instructive.
Yeah, it just actually got updated about 2 minutes ago. And here's one while you're getting that open from Anthony Davis, our super duper super chatter. $10 here.
A generous man. Only $10. I heard he gave Lofty like 1,000. I'm not answering his question. All right, I'm answering his question.
This is from D'Anthony Avis. No relation.
That was good.
So he would like to know your thoughts on George Hill versus Rivers for FanDuel tournaments this evening.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, we've got a few good ones lined up here, so more theoretical ones. So I'll ask some of those. So don't blast all your player versus player ones. Just I've got a few thinking ones here for Eddie that I think will benefit.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I like that quite a bit. I need to look at their ownerships.
All right.
That's very instructive with the answer to that question. Raw points, I have to select Austin Rivers there by a reasonably significant number. So it really comes down to how chalky he gets, and I don't think he's going to be as owned as he should be. So looking FanDuel, we have Bembry as the cream de la crop. We have Ersan at 31%. Ooh, that's really interesting. Look, I think there is a real chance. Now I have to look it up to make sure that I remembered all that right. So I apologize, everyone. You're going to have to sit tight because that obviously, if there's a 30% guy that I just said, I think there's a majority chance does not play. I pretty clearly have to.
All right, you look at that. Let me do a couple things here while you're pulling that up. In chat, I'm dropping the link to my Cash Building Blocks article. I talk about making a group of some of the fringier, sketchier values tonight and limiting it to no more than 1 per lineup. We may want to do that in 2. The other thing you could do is take those guys that are very risky, put them in one group and say no more than 1. So it's not saying they have to be in there, but no more than 1. And then you go in and you make another one with your Rivers, Robin Lopez, etc., the better value guys, and say must play 1 or must play 2, or you could even limit them as well. And that way you can get a better player pool on your individual roster. So I think that's something that's important to think about.
I don't have a strong take there. Not because I don't think something is right. I'm pretty sure something's right, but I don't think I'm smart enough to know it because there's too many variables and too many variables I can't precisely say. Like, there is this really weird math equation of, let's say I limit my super chalk guys. Like I consider McLemore and Rolo and Austin Rivers the good chalk, and I limit it to only one of those. Whether or not that's a good idea is this really lengthy mathematical problem of how popular they each are, multiplied by our projection and their chance of success, and then they're amortized, everybody have a drink, conglomerate ownership, and how many people would be sharing the first prize, and it would even math down to what percentage of the prize pool on the tournaments I'm playing goes to first and how necessary it is to split it. So I don't think I have a strong take if someone said I either need to play all 3 of those guys in every lineup or none of those guys in every lineup. It's really, you know what I'm saying? Like I get.
Oh yeah. And that's why you want to be. You want to be careful with it. It's just showing another way you can utilize the optimizers to help spread out your.
I think it is useful to be able to implement things like that. Like I want to play tonight safe, so I want to make sure I have some chalk.
Because people like the must play, but I also want to say you can limit it as well. You can go the other direction.
Right. Like I really don't believe in two of those values, so I want to really limit them. It's good to have the tools to exercise that option, but. I would be really. It's a really complicated question because again, then you're figuring out how varied and off the beaten path you are by playing this other value. But that would be related to how much of your other non-value guys are chalk, because what you're trying to do is maintain different enough that if you win first place, you tie 4 ways and not 40 ways. So that would have an effect on how you treat your value, and it's just a really. I would have trouble without knowing everything about everything, even guessing whether or not I would want to set that rule one way or the other. But I do think it's good to point out that you could set a rule to enforce such a thing amongst your lineups.
Right. So George Hill and Rivers, you're looking up some George Hill.
Oh, dear Christ.
Before you forget.
Actually, I got you,
Anthony Davis. Don't you worry.
I went on to DJ Wilson and Urson is actually where I pivoted to there. So, yeah, I had that right. So, Urson Ilyasova sat 2 games, one on the 20th and the 23rd. He was healthy for at least one of those. I don't know about the other one. I have to look. But in both of those, DJ Wilson played. And those are the only games DJ Wilson played. And the game on the 20th was a healthy scratch. And he did not play and DJ Wilson played. So on FanDuel, where we project him to be 30-something% owned, I would play no Urson Ilyasova. I don't think he's necessary. And I'm really excited to see what they could do. Now, there's a very real chance he plays. 70-30 might have been too high. I'll roll it back to 60-40 he doesn't play just because Brook Lopez isn't there. So there is some time to be filled up there. Now, though, they have plenty of guys to fill it up, and they can give it to any combination of, obviously, Robin Lopez, the most likely suspect. But then, DJ Wilson and Giannis plays time at the 5. And there are a number of ways they can go to fill those minutes. So they don't need Urson, but I will say the likelihood of him sitting is maybe a little smaller than I first made it out to be, but it's a very real possibility. So I would have no Urson, and I like Urson as a player, and $3,800 makes a ton of sense. But barring Urson is starting news at this point, I'd be at 0 on FanDuel. Run yourself some Gary Clark or some other dudes.
All right.
Can you please expand on stacking on a small slate? Just real quickly, the benefits of game stacking is you get the advantage of that game going out of control. That game getting overtimes is the most obvious example. Just weird game effects. And the price you pay by stacking a game is less selectability of better options from other games. So the fewer games there are, the more likely your game is exemplary. Like there's 3 games tonight. 2 games could be massive blowouts that score 198 points. And if your game is even average, it's the best game by a light year. It's much less likely that if you're game stacking game X is exemplary if there's 12 games on the slate. It's much more hard to be notable or notable by as much. Conversely, the price you pay is much greater on a giant slate. Stacking a game on a 12-game slate means you are eschewing playing lots of good plays from 11 games or 92% of the field. Tonight, if you decide to focus primarily on one game, you're still exposing yourself to a third of the field, which again is proportionally more. So just mathematically, as a truism, as an axiom, the greater number of games, the less beneficial, all else being equal, stacking a game is. Like there are scenarios where there's a 12-game slate, but we've got the Golden State Warriors versus the Rockets, and each team has 7 available players. Okay, that might be an exception.
All right.
So I need to go back and take one more look at the ownership here. Looking on FanDuel, we have Austin Rivers at 18.6% and George Hill at 14%. I would play Austin Rivers. I have to project off Austin Rivers by I think about 3 more fantasy points.
All right. Another super chat from north of
Rivers. Go ahead.
Another super chat from north of the border.
Sure.
This is our buddy. I can't say his name. Guillaume. We'll just go with Blaze. GB.
Are you going for Guillaume?
I didn't know that's how you would spell Guillaume, but I bet that's what it is.
It's Guillaume. That's how that is. Guillaume Blaise.
Merd is all I got. That
Merd.
So you guys are the best. Can't get enough of your. See, this is to both of us. Your beautiful minds. Is fading Gary Clark and Macklemore a mistake tonight?
No, that was easy. I like Gary Clark and Macklemore just fine, but neither of them are guaranteed to be brilliant. There are ways Gary Clark doesn't get enough time, but I'm a pretty big fan of playing those players. But no, I don't consider them anywhere near a must play. If you have just Austin Rivers, I'm fine with it. I would feel a little weird to have no Rivers, no Macklemore, no Clark in a lineup. It seems unlikely to me none of those boys get there. But if that lineup has Harden and Westbrook or Harden and Tucker or something like that in it, but yeah, no, I would not feel bad whatsoever if I didn't happen to have those two guys. There are not massive fantasy producers. Clark's path to minutes is trickier than some of the other guys in the field. I'm a big fan of stacking that game. If I'm going to stack a game, that is the game that I would look to stack. I feel that the prices make that the most efficient strategy. I really like Trae Young as a play. I guess I haven't said this in the past. I like the matchups that he's going to see with pick a guy, Rivers, Macklemore, Harden, and Westbrook in the past. He's looked pretty good against. Obviously, I have some concern for last night's game where he took, I don't even remember how many the hell shots, but about 39 turnovers, 40 odd minutes. I'm not thrilled with any of those things, and then getting on a plane to Houston. But based on what I see as sort of preliminary ownership and the price is well too cheap, I imagine first lineup I'm getting to him at his price a little more frequently than much higher owned Russell Westbrook. So I imagine I end up on Harden Young pretty frequently. Again, Westbrook versus Harden projects as a better points per dollar play. If I'm building a cash lineup, if I'm building just a somewhat chalkier lineup, I end up there, I think, pretty frequently. But I imagine, going back to DraftKings now, we have these guys about the same. We have Trae Young, 33% owned, Russell Westbrook, 29% owned. So that's about right. Westbrook's a little more. But I imagine I land on Trae Harden. I would rather play Trae Harden than Westbrook Harden. But again, all three of those guys seem great, and I would probably end up. I like that final game the most. It's not really a final game; it's two of them are late. But these guys are all a little lower owned than I would like them to be. So let me respond to some of this ownership. Ben McLemore, 3,500, 64% is asinine. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is almost point on point exactly what we were looking at with.
It just updated again, literally 20 seconds ago.
Did it come down?
Macklemore.
No, it went up higher, 68%. That's absolutely ridiculous. There's no mathematical justification for that whatsoever.
All right, if that number, quick news for you: Zeller is in, and then
as expected,
Alan Crabb is getting the start for Cam Reddish.
Well, that's okay. You can play some Alan Crabb. I would rather that news came at 654 than 634 because you could, actually get him at 1% owned, and it's a 3-game slate. And maybe you get 25, 28 minutes out of Alan Crabb. He played last night off the bench. I want to say he played 10 minutes. I think was the number.
That's about right. I just had it up. He is.
I think he played 10 minutes off the bench last night. Everyone on that team played, he had 30 out of Len, but everyone played 40 or 10. The centers.
Yeah, he played 10 last night, played 20 each of the 5 games before. He played basically 20 to 22.
Yeah, so we have to look at his price now, and I gotta readjust some things. But he's fine, a bit more cashy as an option, but a more unique. I'd much rather play him at 5% than Ben McLemore at 68%. In cash, that's fine. Ben McLemore points per dollar is the second best cash game on the play. He's not as good as Robin Lopez based on the rates and the time you can expect for them. And the lines in the game would factor into that math too. I mean, Houston is a pretty massive favorite. But in tournaments, I'd probably go to none. 70% is insane. If anything over like 60% to me easily, and it's the same thing as the Corey Joseph. It's an exact same scenario as poor fantasy player in a very strong matchup with overwhelming ownership when there are plenty of good pivots that I project within a point or two. So I will never understand playing 70% owned guy who I project for 21.5 as opposed to 6% owned guy I project for 20.5. So yes, I would have little or no Ben McLemore if the chalk goes to him with that degree of rapidity. He projects just fine. He's absolutely fine in any cash lineup. He's absolutely fine in any GPP lineup because, again, he's going to be so overwhelmingly owned. His present is almost irrelevant. I'm looking at my DK placeholder. He's in there because I figured he would be, not majorly owned. But, if you look at, he's... last couple games, 19 minutes, 14 fantasy points. 21 minutes, 10 fantasy points. 32 minutes, 24 fantasy points. Now, this matchup is better than all of those. Good matchup earlier this year against Minnesota. 37 minutes. It's about what you could see tonight. 31 fantasy points. And that's not a crazy game. That's 0.8 fantasy points a minute. But, he should be in a vacuum on 40, 45%. It's fine if he's the highest owned player on the slate. 70% is just ignoring the fact that he's Ben McLemore, much like we were ignoring the fact that this guy is Corey Joseph, etc. Guys don't deserve to be 70% owned when there are 7 good pivots to you. So I would rather play Alan Crabb at, I assume, approximately the same price and projecting him for 7 less fantasy points or what have you. Alan Crabb is actually more than Ben McLemore. That's pretty funny. Alan Crabb is $3,800, but I'm updating some rankings and putting him in anyway.
All right. Super chat here from Lincoln Smith. Since we've had a little bit more news and we now know that Bismack Biyombo is going to be starting for Charlotte.
Bismack Biyombo will start?
Yes.
Ooh,
I don't think we want to play him. Is that still the thought?
Well, they hadn't been super happy with Cody Zeller after a hot start.
I was thinking more for this particular matchup and his price.
Well, the thing is, he's 45 on DK, 48 on FanDuel. Is that right?
That sounds right.
It's entirely ownership based. I will have him projected for fewer minutes and fantasy points than Robin Lopez, who costs $1,300 and $1,500 less respectively. So by any cash sensibility, he's not going to make any sense. It's just a question as to how much people get away. And I'm guessing people won't get away that much. He's had 2 very good games in a row. And I expect that he still maintains 15 or 20% ownership. So I would not mind having some. But he would not be a priority play for me.
This is Lincoln Smith Super Chat. What is your core 3 on FanDuel tournaments?
I don't want to completely cheap this out and say,
give him a top, your most comfortable top play, your best point per dollar play, and someone you think is good in tournaments.
Trey, the guys that I expect I would end up over the field on would be Harden, Westbrook, Trey, Tucker, Clark, Rivers. I imagine I would end up under on McLemore, who I think is just fine, but doesn't project that much better than, say, Rivers. Literally, I have McLemore about 1.5 points better than Rivers, who's about a point better than Clark. If one of them is going to be owned 12 times as much as the other two, that will not math out in the long term. Other than that, I'm looking for anyone else who I really feel like I'd want to get super exposed to there. Nope, that's really it.
All right, and I do want to. You talked a lot about Alan Crabb, but just got to this super chat that was asked around the time you were talking about it. Neil Orfield dropped to $50 on you. Just wanted to say Crabb starting for Reddish.
Yeah, I have him as a C in cash and a B in tournaments. Okay. He's fine. I have him at 21 minutes looking at the rotation I'm looking at right now. You might get 24, something like that. But but the matchup is really exceptional. This Houston team has been alternatingly just dreadful on defense. So real possibility that these guys get a little more run than we might originally expect. Sorry, I'm doing 5 things at once. I'm trying to get deeper into the news and find some Bismack. Thoughts on Miles Turner versus Joel Embiid matchup? Joel Embiid has absolutely pushed his shit in. I apologize for my language, but Joel Embiid has made him look dumb in the past. They've played, I can think of 4 times. Not once did I come away thinking anything like, wow, Miles Turner has sort of a reputation as this block shot specialist guy, and Joel Embiid is just this phenomenal offensive player who's also simply a larger, better version of Miles Turner. Like I remember them being showcase games for me where I saw how good. Now I'm kind of curious. I'm gonna look it down and see if my favorite thing to do, does my memory match stats? And all right, so that player Turner, player
All right, while you're looking at that, I'm going to sell something real quick here to the 2,200 who are watching. 1, hit that like button. Okay. 2, listen to this because I have got a deal for you. This is for SuperDraft, partners and sponsor of this show. You're going to want to check them out. Why? Well, because they have multiplier game mode, which means we do not have to deal with those pesky salary caps anymore. You can play any player you want as long as it meets the position requirements. Each player has a multiplier against their baseline actual fantasy production. So the worse or riskier the player is, the higher the multiplier they get. The deal for you guys, 1, is they're running overlays. They ran their big NFL contest last week with 25% overlay, and it's shaping up to go that way again. This is their marketing tool. They're going to do the same thing for NBA, and they also have single game NFL that they just released as well. We do have projections that incorporate their multipliers, which makes things a lot easier. They have basketball, hockey, and NFL, so you're going to want to check that out. If you deposit $100, they will give you an instant $20 deposit bonus if you come in on the link that I just dropped into chat. So please do consider using that. Check it out. It is worthwhile. Eddie, Embiid, and Turner.
That's it. I'm walking off the show. That is the biggest thing anyone has ever said to me. Okay, so yeah, Embiid and Turner. Looking back over the last 2 years, 4 meetings. Embiid's worst game was about 45 fantasy points. Last 3 games since then was 40 and 21 with 3 assists, a steal, and a block. 22 and 13 with 8 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks, and 33 and 12 with 2 steals. So 50s, 60s, 70s in one of those. Yeah, 40, 21, 3 and 1. That's actually probably close to Embiid's career high in fantasy points in 34 minutes. Also big foul trouble for Miles Turner in those games, 4, 5 fouls. Yeah, the issue is here. I do have to be a little hesitant. Like, I think Embiid is just fine. I probably ranked him 2As. He might have to come down to a BA because he does project a little worse for me than other guys in that Westbrook sort of range. The ceiling is massive. Feel free to have all the Joel Embiid you want. I do think his minutes trend towards the bottom a little bit tonight. They haven't said that. There's no official news towards that. But 35 minutes last night, I think they are aware of that. Both these teams are very good defensively. Both these teams do not play terribly fast. Jay Rich being out doesn't mean a ton for me. You have, Horford back in there and Simmons. So, and it's just not a game I'm super high on. So there is no reason Joel Embiid can't get absolutely whatever he wants. Feel free to play all the Joel Embiid you want. I do have minutes concerns, and I think it is a little less likely that he puts up, insane numbers I have him projected for 30 and a half minutes. He got a half minute. That's how much I looked at this. Usually people get round minutes, but he got a half minute, which still makes him just fine. But it is the tacit bet against spending a little less on Brogdon or Westbrook or any of these other guys who feel a little bit better. So I end up sort of like, I didn't bring them up because I don't really have a strong take on Embiid. I expect exceptional production, but I'm concerned about minutes. So it sort of comes out in the wash, I guess, is the easier way to explain it.
All right, here's a good question we got in chat. I'm going to say this very slowly for everybody listening. This is a hypothetical. This is not happening, but we had someone ask us, what would you do if there's a fire drill for the 8 o'clock game and Giannis Antetokounmpo ends up sitting? Again, this is a hypothetical, guys.
He's probable. I mean, he
hurt his ankle a little bit last night. It's probable We don't know what's going to happen. We also haven't heard anything about Middleton. But
I think it's his back, I should say. Not that that terribly matters, but I believe Giannis' back, not an ankle. If that, some people make I do make differences with coming off whatever, but I believe Giannis is a back, not an ankle. So, for what it's worth, sorry to correct you, but
no. That's good. I'm going straight.
I just remember because they're all backs.
Oh, thank you. Yep, you're right.
Hill, Giannis, and Brolo, I think, right?
Hill, Giannis tweaked his ankle on Friday, was able to play through it, but he's on the injury report for something else, likely his back. Giannis has not missed any games yet, and he has played in back-to-backs before.
Yeah, neither has Brolo, by the way. Brolo started every game for the Bucks this year. What would I do in the fire drill? I would end up with an overwhelming amount of Eric Bledsoe. I would end up with getting rid of certainly every vestige of Ben McLemore, but also all my Gary Clark and then my Austin Rivers in that order and turning them into Ersan Ilyasova followed by DJ Wilson, because they won't give Ersan the night off almost certainly if Giannis doesn't play. I do expect him to play based on everything I'm reading, but that's I think that would be my rough.
So most people are going to take that and pivot over to Harden with their extra money if they don't have him. So that would boost Harden's ownership on that one. So that's
it is worth pointing out. Please build your lineups in such a way that that is possible, because I want to make sure we're doing this correctly. They're the 2 late games. They are the 2 late games. Yeah, they're the 2 8:00 games. So have swappity do with either multi-positional eligible guys or them in the utility spot, assuming you're playing on DraftKings or FantasyDraft or some site that has a pure utility spot. Yahoo has one, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure to set up your lineup so that you should always, I haven't said this year, so I'll say this. You should always have your later slate guys lower down. Using DraftKings as the easiest example, if at all possible, anyone you have playing in the early game, which probably isn't a lot of guys, I don't think that generally would be the game. It'd be the game I'd want to target least tonight. I feel safe in saying many of the Pacers guys are priced really cheap, and we haven't talked about this game a little bit. So I will say that Sabonis at 7,700 is just fine for me. I think I have him as an A in cash and a B in tournaments, which is he's one of a few guys today. Ben McLemore, actually, before I saw that insane number, was already an A in cash and a B in tournaments. He'd be my second AC in history right now. He would be an A in cash and a C in tournaments at 70% ownership. But Sabonis, that's a really tough spot with Horford, Embiid, Pace to get some sort of ceiling out of him. But 7,700, you're going to get your 40 or whatever. So, he's an A, B there. Brogdon, again, basically a similar situation. That price is well adjusted for a difficult matchup. Lamb is a bit more desperate. Turner, I have discussed my number of issues there. $4,800 TJ Warren. I would certainly rather have in my cash lineup than, say, almost identically priced Bismack Biyombo, where I can see more ways that goes away. Again, not a spot I'm going to get a lot of a ceiling. I mean, this Philadelphia team's defense is extremely legitimate, but all those guys very well priced on Indiana.
All right. Reminder for those being dumbasses in chat, I live to ban you. So
does that count?
There are no more warnings. If you're calling people names, if you're being a dumbass, I'm just banning you. That's not a timeout. That means you just don't get to be in chat anymore. So good luck on that one. Well, we don't have time for this. We have a lot of people in here, so let's not do this. That's YouTube chat. If you want to be away from that riffraff, come on behind the paywall. We don't have to worry about that.
So Hartenstein.
Yeah, Hartenstein's a good question. That's been asked a couple times.
I think Hartenstein is a reasonable tournament play. I currently have him at 10 minutes. This is not a situation. Again, there is a massive amount of rest here. So my interest in him does to a certain degree negatively correlate with any desire to keep PJ Tucker's minutes down for more center run for him, or to keep Tyson Chandler at 9 minutes instead of 19 minutes. So I do think it is fairly risky. I would rather DJ Wilson as an immediate corollary. And again, he hasn't played in several games, so that should give you some degree of my level of interest here. Thoughts on Al Horford? I think he's fine. Is Zeller out of play now? No. On a 3-game slate, I would find him a very desperation GPP play, but I think having 2% of Cody Zeller is not an unreasonable take on this slate. He's like 4,700 now on DraftKings. That's fine. Anywhere you're paying an actual price tag on him, it's just wrong. But no, on 3-game slates and tournaments, there are universes in which Cody Zeller plays 22 minutes off the bench, gets 31 fantasy points, and ends up being the best center play. He's obviously a shadow of most immediately Robin Lopez, but a few other guys.
All right. Sorry if you mentioned this. Pacers will be starting Brogdon, Lamb, Warren, Sabonis, Turner, as expected.
I did not mention it, but that is not surprising.
All right. We've got 9 minutes until lock.
More questions. More questions. Ask me questions now.
Oh, I didn't know that's how we could do it. Nice. Now I learned a trick with Super Chat here. On FanDuel, TJ Warren or Miles Bridges? Because small forward is a mess.
Small forward is a mess. Let's take a look there. You have Giannis, Harris, which 7,000 is a good price for Harris, but again, the matchup isn't ideal. Warren and Bridges at 57 or 55. House not featured in today's film. DeAndre Hunter at $5,000. That's not cheap. Batum at 43. Holiday 43. Ennis, could it happen 2 days in a row? 36. Thibault 36. Dougie McBuckets not appearing in today's film, probably. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Vince Carter, Chandler Parsons. Yeah, I understand now some of those small forward questions that seemed pretty goddamn random. This is a pile of crap. At their FanDuel prices, in both cash and in tournaments, I would play TJ Warren. I like Miles Bridges just fine. And hopefully that, I mean, I'm going to check the ownership. I am presuming there is not a massive disparity between the two, which would change my opinion. But I imagine I would actually end up with Warren in both. We have Miles Bridges at 23%. We have TJ Warren at 11%. So yeah, I would certainly play. There are going to be basically I like his ability to get through the Furkan hole in the defense more often than not. This is one in several games they should start Matisse Thybulle and they'll start Furkan Korkmaz, and that'll be the wrong mistake. And it's cost them a game already this year. And it's the biggest hole in the defense, and it gets exploited, and might happen again today. And whatever, think about cash again. Cash might be Miles Bridges. Crap. It's really close. Tournaments, I would play with TJ Warren.
Premium chat question here from GG123. So this high dollar FanDuel small field, would you play Crab and Bembry in the same lineup?
I don't have a problem with it. So would you is an odd sentence structure. I don't have an issue with you doing so. They are cheap enough. It is a 3-game slate. I am fine with you doing both of those things. It's not something I would want to target doing. You're obviously taking a risk getting away from McLemore there, but I really like that risk. But I would try to run, Rivers, Young, Harden up top, and then make those sorts of pivots. So I like what you're doing there. So yeah, I don't have an objection with it. I'm not like, let me target these two guys, but I see what you're doing.
All right, thoughts on damn it, I can't think of his first name. Yeah, DeAndre Hunter on FanDuel tournaments and his 0.6 fantasy points per minute this year.
Yeah, I mean he's super 3-and-D guy. Again, I'm trying to think of any sort of super strong take. I'm concerned. I believe he played 41 minutes also last night. I have to assume his extension will continue with no Reddish out there. But I don't think he's worth the price. I think he's worth it as a low-owned guy. I got to remember, is he a small forward there? I think he might be a shooting guard. I gotta look up DeAndre Hunter on FanDuel. DeAndre Hunter is a $5,000 small forward. So my thoughts on him. I'm gonna look at my projections for today. Points per dollar, he ends up very close. I would still prefer Warren in tournament at what is going to be the best ownership of the few. In cash, I probably want to spend as little as possible, so I would have Hunter a hair over Bridges as far as someone I'd like to play in that lineup. I have very little distinction between the three of them in any format. I would probably, again, stick with Warren just for lowest owned and people not as heavily targeting that game.
All right. Sorry, people asking some questions there. Let me get over to here.
I like Jabari. I like Jabari Parker, by the way. Not a name I've gotten to talk about a lot this year, but has generally done well when we do talk about him. Nothing super to add here, but again, the supplemental most immediate secondary scorer on this team, and this is a game that I expect to be pretty significantly the fastest of the evening, more so than Vegas currently has indicated. I still like $6,700 Jabari Parker on a 3-game slate against Houston, and a number of the guys he could get into are plus matchups. So it depends how much time we get with Tucker down at the 5 and a couple of other things, but certainly limited power forward pool on FanDuel and 6,700 on DK. Another guy I'd want to have some significant amount of exposure to.
Parker or Bledsoe fantasy draft cash, they are the same price. That's for Achilles.
I would play Eric Bledsoe in cash. Again, the minutes are a little bit concerning, but I would still have to go with Bledsoe in cash. Not that Parker's gotten that many minutes recently either, but I would still barely have Bledsoe in cash. It's close though.
All right, 4 minutes. I probably should do a crunch here, so that's what I'm doing now. So looking at a few of the questions.
Thoughts on Devontae Graham? I do prefer Graham to Bledsoe at their respective ownerships and prices. Were I to put one of them in a GPP lineup, I'm more comfortable with Graham than Bledsoe tonight.
Favor, could you just read a few more of those questions in Slack, please?
Sure. Do what you're doing. Goga should be on your radar. How many minutes for Goga tonight? I think I have Goga for 10 minutes, but apologies. Yeah, that Devontae Graham question was there a few times. Cam Reddish out. Thoughts on Embiid on FanDuel tonight? Let me look specifically at center on FanDuel for a second there. I imagine the guy I would be most exposed to would be Robin Lopez, but I imagine after that it would be Joel Embiid. Again, not a ton of terribly viable centers here. Yeah, my order of preference, again speaking somewhat vaguely, would be Robin Lopez, then Joel Embiid. I think Joel Embiid can absolutely give you 60 in his 31 minutes tonight, or whatever we get out of him. I am a little concerned about the minutes distribution, but most of the time I think the correct single lineup construction is to play Robin Lopez because he's the absolute minimum and he lets you play more. I mean, I'm looking at my placeholder here and it's got, Westbrook, Harden, Giannis, Trey in it. And the only way you can make that happen is by having a whole lot of cheap dudes everywhere the heck else. So pretty big fan of Robin Lopez, but I'm no issue with any amount of Joel Embiid. Again, my inclination and the numbers back this up is that it's a matchup in which he can do just fine. I am going a little deeper in with 90 seconds to go and checking for any news because again, it's 3 games. One starts in 2 minutes, the other one starts in 1 hour and 2 minutes. So I really want to see if I get any additional Google alerts on any of that. What's Damon Jones? Damian Jones is the starting center for the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know what's mean. I don't know what what's Damon Jones means, but Damian Jones is the starting center for the Hawks, nay of the Warriors, tore a pec muscle. One of those guys who really let you know how good it was to be in that system. Looking for stuff.
Oh, I just closed my Fantasy Cruncher tab. That was not good. So here's what you do in this situation.
You got about 30 seconds, buddy. Here's something you should fire drill. What happens when you close your Fantasy Cruncher tag?
Yeah, I'm opening it. I'm picking one player if I can from the early game.
Pick anyone from the 8 games.
No, I'm getting out.
Yeah, go punt to the 2 8:00 games, which are the better 2 games. Just punt late. Oh, apparently my Monopoly take has inspired some hatred, which I don't have a problem if you enjoy playing Monopoly. Monopoly is an absolutely terrible game. Period. There's lots of terrible things that I enjoy doing. That's fine. I might like old Full House episodes. I might like McDonald's. That's fine. I would not argue that Full House is, brilliant television or that McDonald's is wonderful cuisine. Okay, if you like playing Monopoly, have a good time. That's fine. Okay. it's not good by any, like, if you list the things that are good about board games, it doesn't check any boxes. It's just, it's dreadful. It's actually like a cautionary tale. Now, I will say that it also teaches us some great things about product development and the importance of having things that are easily understandable. I will also say that whereas the development and the gameplay are subpar, being very generous, the design is somewhat brilliant in that it's simple. Some would say elegant. It's intuitive. I'm moving around. If I land on your space, I have to pay. Like, it's clearly compelling. But
all right, so let's see if this went through.
I have my World Board Game Championships plaques. I'm a giant board gaming snob, simply because it bothers me that board gaming is such crap in my country. Like, if you write down these are the best 100 board games in the world, 9 of them came from the United States of America, as opposed to video games, music, any number of other things. Like, we are the third world of board gaming over here. So that's why it bothers me so much. It's absolutely brilliant done correctly, and so rarely done correctly in America. So just
all right, okay. Chat. I made it. I'm playing nothing but 8 o'clock players. So there we go.
Looks like you made it.
So
nicely done, man.
Saved for another day here. We do have a little daddy likes.
Ooh.
Let's see here. Some people.
I don't know.
Oh, Risk better than Monopoly. Risk is it's a fun game.
Risk is not. Don't get me wrong. Risk is not good. It is not as good as Total War, World in Flames, Axis and Allies, BattleTech, Warhammer, any number. Like, pick another combat game. That being said, the vast difference between Risk and Monopoly, like, Monopoly is a nudge above games where you make no choices. Monopoly is very, very slightly better than Chutes and Ladders, which is a game that you have the same chance of winning as your chair, which requires you just roll dice and do what they say. There are no decisions to be made. Monopoly, I honestly think I could make an argument Chutes and Ladders is better because it's shorter. It's like picking a small forward on FanDuel. Well, I can't get a good one, so I'm going to spend as little as possible. Chutes and Ladders is done, hopefully, in 20 minutes. Monopoly, if you play the game rules, is like 3 hours goddamn game, during which one of the infinite things that's wrong with it is the death cycle. Like, who won Monopoly after 37 minutes. Like, you've all moved around, you've picked up stuff. Unless someone makes a brain-dead trade, who has won after a half hour. It just takes 3 hours to die. But it's just like, oh, he's got 3 Monopolies, he's got 2, I've got 1. This guy is going to win 99% of the time. Now we have to roll it out and just go and go and go and go and go. But you already know, like, anyway, sorry. There's something I'm
probably one of 10 people in chat that actually has played Axis and Allies, if there's that many.
I guess it's a sad statement, but that's just,
Fortress America is the faster version.
Fortress America is fine, but lasers were too good. Once America got lasers, they couldn't lose. But Fortress America, Shogun, that entire series of American games, by the way, is not good. They're still bad. But literally on a scale of 1 to 10, those games are 3s and 4s and 5s. Monopoly is like a 0.04 or something. I mean, it's an incredibly, incredibly tiny number. Yeah, Axis and Allies is fine. I got a couple. Like, I could take a camera tour around the room. There are many board games within close proximity of me. But let's hear ownership on that. I got to put my brain in that early slate because it's just
the Maharishi owns Axis and Allies. There you go. As do I.
I have several versions of it. Depending, you can't have Russia attack on the first turn. That makes it too.
Yeah. I used to have to play it by myself because my friends didn't want to play it. So
yeah, Axis cannot win if Russia can attack on the first turn by any decent player. The Allies can't lose if you don't let Russia attack on the first turn. That's a pretty simple balancing tool and appropriate. So
all right,
let's we got
Philly Indy. What do you got?
Yeah. What do I got? Okay, people who will have any sort of reasonable ownership. I mean, there's a few. The guys on Indy are priced really well. So you will have Embiid will have real ownership. TJ Warren at 4,800 will have real ownership. Sabonis will have ownership. Brogdon will have ownership. Lamb. You'll have little bits of like Simmons, Horford, Miles Turner, or whatever. But you're going to have a whole smattering of like, who do I think is highest owned?
Yep.
center was so bad. It's Embiid or TJ Warren, right? Is it Embiid or TJ Warren? I'll start there.
Yes.
Okay. I got to think about it. I don't know. They're going to be very similar. I will say TJ Warren.
Wrong. TJ Warren was 20.4. Joel Embiid was 21.6.
Right.
And you actually you went down and hit all but one of the top 5 with your, I'm sorry. You hit 6 of the top, you missed 1 is the way I should have said this, of the top 6 when you were just ticking off names.
Oh man, it's the starting lineups. No offense, but this is
no. I know. Don't give away the secrets.
The 2 teams, it's like,
Tobias Harris was the name you did mention.
Well, I mean, like, it's a 3-game slate. That's I take 0 credit for anyone could have done that. Can you name the players starting in this game? Congratulations.
So TJ McConnell, that jersey was actually left in his locker by the Philadelphia team. And I was trying to read the little note left to it, but basically it said, "Thank you for all of your contributions while you were with this organization." It was kind of like a thank you joke.
That's nice.
No, it was nice. So we'll see. But what do you think his percent was?
TJ McConnell?
Yeah.
On DraftKings?
Yeah. Or we should start saying daddy like for high-low.
2?
You are correct.
2? It's 2? There we go. Winner.
Matisse Thybulle is 0.7.
I like that more.
Trey Burke, 0.4.
I like that plenty too. I ranked all those guys. Those are the few bench guys who I ranked. If you had to, like, if I'm going to bet the blowout and I need to pick people from this, that's basically when I rank a guy like TJ McConnell, I'm saying, if you like, I need to get little crosses and stars, and I need to get a key or a legend for, if you were building the blowout lineup, like, that's the only time you should be playing TJ McConnell, Aaron Holiday, so on and so forth.
Justin Holiday 2.
I like that a lot. I mean, he's if you look at yesterday's game, I mean, he still held his minutes into the 20s. Like, he's not getting the preponderance of play time that the starters are, really, but he was still $4,000, a little more than $4,000, 43, 37. I'm trying to remember where Justin Holiday was priced, but 24, 25 minutes. He's being pretty productive for him right now. So 2%. I daddy likes that. I'd like 5.
Regional Dunder Mifflin manager 0.3 for Michael Scott.
Nice. That's really nice. Does that make? Am I the assistant regional manager or the assistant?
So I wanted to put this out there. So people are saying Matisse Thybulle sucks ass. He's horrible. He's not. He truly isn't. So he was 4-year starter at the University of Washington. He actually scored in college. Now, granted, not a ton. 6 his freshman year, 10 his sophomore, 11 his junior, 9 his senior. He shot, this is from 3, on an average. He took an average in his career of 4 3-pointers a game. And he shot 35 to 37% those years. That's not bad. He just does not take shots in the pros. He's deferring to everybody. We have not seen a player like him in a long time, Eddie, with the way he does his defense. And that's all he focuses on.
We've seen a lot of players like him, really. I mean, there are players in the, like that sort of follow that. He's not even really 3 and D right now. He's just D. So
he will get to 3 and D.
Right. But there are a lot of players who are brilliantly defensive. Like there's just a class of players who are great.
Bruce Bowen is what I'm going with here.
That's a very good example. And I'll admit it is, but I guess what I'm saying is what's so interesting and what's the distinction about him that you're saying we haven't seen someone like him is he's that offensively anemic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there are other players who I think are defensively comparable to him, but they make more shots. So for him, it's even more focused on, okay, look, dude may take 3 shots per 36 minutes and make one of them for an average of 2.4 points, but we end up in that conversation as opposed to, but yeah, he's not that different from, rookie year Kawhi Leonard. So give him some time.
Yeah, and this is, they're calling me Uncle Rico in chat for living the past. No, point being is you want to understand why a player is not doing well or not performing. You just don't want to do the colloquial, he's bad. This guy really isn't. He is choosing not to do certain things. He is deferring to a team that has plenty of scores on it and guys that have much better experience and have been all-stars, and he hasn't.
Right, and that's the other
where he
thing.
is.
I mean, he is on the court most times, especially when he's picking up a star, with some combination of Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Josh Richardson. Like, so you don't want him taking shots.
Right.
Like you don't, the team is not functioning well. Like one of the reasons I don't like when they play Furkan Korkmaz is he doesn't add anything. He really doesn't add anything. If they played 4-on-5, they would be almost as good. Not quite. That's an exaggeration. But and again, Furkan Korkmaz can shoot. So, people are like, oh, that guy can get buckets. So people are like, yeah, Furkan can get buckets and Matisse sucks. But I don't need, I love having me some TJ Warren. I love having me some PJ Tucker, rather. I love having me some Lucas Mahmoute. I love having me some Patrick Patterson. Guys were just like, I have elite scorers right there. I don't need to do that. I need to be able to pass, hopefully, make an open three, and play some defense, and they'll handle that shit.
Yeah. And for him, it's not that he gets the steals and all that. It's that he's harassing the hell out of people that need to be harassed, and he's making them work and burn another 10% of energy that they don't do in other games, which makes them less effective later.
Yeah, I mean, it's so like talking about like Ben McLemore tonight. Ben McLemore is an outstanding play by any sort of points per dollar sensibility because he's very cheap, and the minutes are pretty well locked in when you run no House, no Capella. So Tucker has to shift down a little bit more. And he's the first guy who gets that time. So he's going to play 35, 36 minutes, and he costs like nothing. So people are immediately like, ooh, bam. I get that. Plus, the matchup is extremely good. But just sort of an intuitive sense of math has to tell you that 70% is a stupid ownership. For him to cost 70%, he would need to be projected so much better than other guys in the spot, and he's just not. Like, he is roughly as offensively anemic, fantasy production anemic as Austin Rivers. I do have him for like 3 more minutes than Austin Rivers. Somebody can look. If you look up their fantasy points per minute in their careers or on the season, they're going to be very close to each other. They're both going to be 0.65, maybe 0.7. They're both going to end up in that range. But having 70% is absurd. And again, the last day we were in the spot was Corey Joseph is 68% owned, and people have him all over the place. Osimo, who generally will be right when I'm wrong, had him 98% owned that day. I feel pretty confidently, that just is not the correct play long term. Are there days you're going to get screwed? Of course. You just need to have a crazy game. McLemore could play 35 minutes tonight, have an above average game and score 41 fantasy points, be the best value play. None of the other value could turn out, and you could be sunk not having him. That will happen once in a while. But there's I'd say there's a 40% chance that he doesn't score 20 fantasy points. And when he's 70% owned and that happens, you get such a massive leg up on the field. And there are just so many other places to go on a 3-game slate in that value, from even like Alan Crabb opening up. But there's 2 other plays on his team with Clark and Rivers. And Rivers saved you $300 on DraftKings. Like, I just don't, I'll never quite get that. And again, I assume I'm wrong. I don't know how. I run it and I look at it backwards, and I try to figure out the converse, and I try to figure out how I'm wrong, because people I really respect disagree with me and end up running 98% Ben McLemore tonight and things of that nature. And I don't know what to tell you. I assume I am incorrect, and that it is an amazing play, and he should be 70% owned, because most of the people I respect will have that much and more. I can't find any mathematical justification for doing that. I think if you play the slate out a million times and your choices are play 0 or 100%, 0 is so much of a better play. I don't even actually have it close. But I have to say, it's like when I disagree with Vegas. When I think this and Vegas thinks this, I generally assume most of the time, 90+% of the time, I'm wrong and Vegas is right. Vegas is a whole lot of really smart people and a whole lot of computers. And if they conclude this and I've got this, they're probably right the vast majority of the time. But if you're paying for or curious of my opinion, I will never, ever understand being over the field of a 70% owned Ben McLemore night. It just comes down to chance of failing. How can you imagine? Like, there are guys who it's much easier for Ben McLemore to fail than Robin Lopez to fail. Not that Robin Lopez is the world's best basketball player either, but he's a center and he's near the basket, and that just adds some, defensive just picks up a couple more rebounds. It's just really hard for him not to get there at also, by the way, a cheaper price. Ben McLemore needs to only play 28 minutes or play 35 minutes and just shoot 5 of 14 from the field and not do anything else. Or like it shouldn't be hard for anyone to envision him failing. And that's where I don't know. That's where it maps out for me. The boom bust of it, which I know is a popular tool we have that I've never looked at for a second. I think the bust potential is really, really high because it's Ben McLemore. There you go.
All right. Oh, sorry. Let me do one last bonus question for premium chat. Since they stuck around this long, then we will be getting out of here. There will be a show in some format tomorrow. This is it looks like FanDuel is going with the 6 o'clock main slate. I don't know DraftKings yet. They haven't posted their biggest contest. I'm assuming they're waiting to see what FanDuel is doing. So this is for Blazing Trails. Would you go with PJ Tucker and Miles Bridges, or McLemore and Jabari Parker on DK? God, even after hearing you say that, I want to go the second one.
In cash, I would very possibly go the second one. In tournaments, I would probably go the first one. I would do anything to pivot off Ben McLemore at this point. Like, it sounds dumb, but the options the ways to make money tonight, you're always trying to find a way to be advantaged over the field, and we're all using pretty much the same damn projections and pretty much the same everything. So if you want an advantage, your two advantages tonight are, one, being attentive and dealing with late news, and maybe we get something weird out of Giannis or whomever for the late games, and two, reacting to stupid ownership. 70% on Ben McLemore is not mathematically tenable. It just isn't. I don't know where that number should be. Might be 40, might be 50, might be 55. It really depends, where you project all the value. And if you have him at 36 and a half minutes and 29 fantasy points and no one else over 22, then maybe that, obviously it just comes down to, but there's no chance that the numbers end up with him being 70% owned relative to. So like those are the two places you can make money. So generally, in any kind of tournament setting, I'm going to pick against the Ben McLemore side if you have any two playable players on the other side, because that's really the only edge here. The rest of the ownership, as projected, is right about where it should be. Two easiest ways to win tonight are pay attention and keep your teams well updated, and pivot away from a 20% 2-eye on Ben McLemore. He's good. He should probably be the highest play on the slate. But 40, 45, 70%, it's just, there's enough of a chance he fails that I'll play the other 30. All
right, gamers, with that, we want to say thank you again to SuperDraft at superdraft.io. They do have single game contests, so definitely check that out. We'll be talking about them on the NFL Live Before Lock tomorrow night, which you will get at 7:30. And then we'll post when we are doing the NBA Live Before Lock once we know what the main slates
Nuggets and Kings going to overtime.
There we go. Sadly, not on the slate. But with that, gamers, you can follow Eddie on Twitter at FastEddieFair. I am at EmacDFS, and it is awesome _COM.